G'day and welcome to Choosing Uni. I'm Rob Malicki coming to you from Garrigal Land up in Sydney today. And my guest is Hannah Lawrence from the University of Wollongong. She's studying a Bachelor of International Studies, fantastic degree at an awesome university. Hannah, thanks for joining me. How good is this?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Now, you are in an interesting situation because you started your degree during COVID. What was it like after COVID, walking onto campus for the first time to start studying with people in person?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience actually. First thing I noticed was just like the fact that there was no parking. That was my first thing out of everything. I was like really annoyed by how inconvenient that was, and realized I really needed to like give myself a good chunk of time to get on campus. I'm used to just rolling out of bed and like washing my face and like turning up as if I've been awake for a while, with my business top and my party pants. And yeah, I didn't really take into account that I had to get myself looking presentable and give myself time to park my car. So that was my big thing that I realized first off. But just being back on campus itself, going to lectures, I found it really strange, really strange. I felt like a lot of my uni experience was very solo. Like I was just in my room by myself, limited connections with other students, which for me, being quite introverted and very like focused was a great thing. But I never had those opportunities that I guess a lot of other students have to build connections through like social activities and clubs and things like that. And I'm sure they were still going on, but it was like there was a bit of a barrier there to accessing those things. Whereas on campus, like you have things going on all the time and you walk through campus one side to the other and you're bound to bump into someone or some club. So that's something that's been very different for me coming back onto campus. Just there's a lot of hustle bustle, things are really happening. And yeah, I'm just used to sitting, doing my degree in my room. And now I'm in a room with all these people who are just as passionate about what I am passionate about. And yeah, just seeing everyone's faces as well. It's quite weird. Like I'm used to seeing everyone's names on screens. And yeah, these are people that I've been doing my degree with. And we're coming into like third year altogether, like finally meeting each other. It's a really surreal experience.
And so, what's it like? I love the Wollongong campus, but for those people who might not have visited it before, tell me a little bit about it.
It's so beautiful. I've been to other campuses around Australia, and everyone who's come to the campus has said this, that it's just so green. Like it's really, really gorgeous. It does feel like you're walking a little bit through a rainforest, and there's a lot of like wildlife around, which has been really fostered. You can tell it's a real value of the uni to foster that kind of environment, which I'm really proud to be going to a university that is passionate about like environmental sustainability. So that's really cool. It's just gorgeous. It's really pretty. Like lots of walkways that trail through the trees and it's really serene. It's quite big as well. You would think for a regional campus that it would be smaller, but it's a world-class uni. And I think a lot of us forget that because a lot of the students are either rural or from down the road. Like I'm a local student.
Nice.
I live on the south coast. So that is one of my reasons for going, just because it's so close by. So really lucky to have such a good uni on my doorstep. But yeah, we all forget like that this is a regional uni, and it's quite big.
Yeah, so for those people who don't know Wollongong, tell them about the Gong.
Yeah.
And where are you from exactly? Where do you live?
Oh, I'm from
Oh,
Kiama.
perfect. Yeah,
Kiama.
amazing.
It's a beautiful little coastal town. Yeah, which is about 30 minutes south of Wollongong. So for me to get to uni, I either jump on the train, shoot straight up, or I drive more nowadays. But probably will be jumping back on the train since parking's so horrendous. But anyway, it's probably a good deterrent to stop using cars and start using public transport or walking.
Pretty common
So
theme
I guess
actually
that's
across
well.
unis all across the country. It's just parking is revolting,
Oh,
and if
so bad.
occasionally sort of stumble across a university that still doesn't charge for parking, and it's kind of like
Same.
stumbling on, I don't know, a free bar of chocolate or something. It's such a great pleasure when you find a uni that doesn't charge
Yeah.
for parking.
Yeah, every time I jump to campus, I'm always trying to find new ways to like cheat the system and and park off campus somewhere and walk. Sometimes it's quicker to park off campus and
Yeah.
just walk through just because it takes so long to find a park. But yeah, we're right next to the botanical gardens as well. So oftentimes I'll park on the other side of the botanical gardens and walk my way through,
Oh,
and it's just so beautiful. It's really
that's
nice.
clever.
So we're right in an opportune spot and very close to the beach. I think, don't take my word for it, but I think we are one of the closest universities to the beach in Australia as well. So if you're a fan of the beach, if you're a fan of just being in a pretty spaced out city compared to like a lot of others. I mean, when you get into the Wollongong CBD, it is quite squishy, but compared to a lot of other cities, it is more balanced out. So yeah, it's quite nice. It's a bit more of a close knit community. Um, Everyone's got a real good work life balance. It's not too it's not too intense to be at uni. Everyone's pretty chill and they're all happy to be there. And you want to be around people who are like that. You don't want to be around people who are stressing all the time. I mean, people are stressing. They probably are stressing as well. But everyone, for the most part, is very relaxed and happy to be there, which is says a lot. It says a lot about the uni and the culture they cultivate. So
I really love the location. You know, it's a shame to some extent that a lot of Australians don't think about moving away for uni. You know,
yeah.
particularly up in the big cities, you just sort of think, oh, I've got 5 unis nearby. I'll go to one of those. But a
Mm.
place like Wollongong has so much to offer. It's this great community by the beach, awesome beaches, as you say, world class university, fantastic study environment, less
Yeah.
pressure, like slightly slower pace of life, but still heaps of opportunities. It
Hmm.
seems to me that it's the kind of university that really suits a certain type of person much better than one of the big metropolitan institutions
Yeah.
would. Likewise,
Yeah.
people from overseas, you know, students coming from
Yeah.
overseas who might just think Sydney, Melbourne, but then
This
suddenly,
is
boom, you've
it.
got this beautiful
Mm.
campus
Mm.
teaching really some exceptional discipline areas, and doing
Yeah.
it as well as anyone in the country. And so, international studies, how did you end up in that?
Well, I've always been quite passionate about different cultures. Like I just something that's always drawn my attention. I was like that kid um who like would watch like documentaries on YouTube about like random things, and that's how I spent my free time. Like I'm just so intrigued by how others live. And
Sorry, just pause. Why?
yeah, sure.
Can you remember when that started? Well, there's always an origin story. There's always something back there.
Yeah,
Why?
I don't know.
What's your earliest memory of that?
Well, my dad's a pilot, and so he was always traveling overseas, and he was always bringing cool things back from all these adventures. So I guess like travel's in my blood because he's a real keen traveler, and so is my mum. Real heart for the nations. I think that I've grown up in a household where all of us have been really like outward focused, and so I've always found like it really interesting to like look at different like cultures and different ways people lived, and that's just always been in me to like I don't know go and explore and to see what that would be like. That there's always been a real keen curiosity there. Um, I don't know where the documentary thing came. I just like Louis Theroux carried my childhood. Honestly, like those like little shorts on YouTube was so great. Yeah, just like different ways people lived, very intriguing to me. And so when I was working towards figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, I knew that it was going to be globally focused. I knew that I didn't want to stay in my little small town. I went to a very, very white school. Like there wasn't much diversity at all. And I remember as a kid being like really sad about that. Like I just wanted to be amongst different cultures, and I really envied a lot of schools in Sydney who were a bit more multicultural. And down where I am, it wasn't like that when I was growing up. I mean, things are much different now, and like the whole demographic of my region is shifting, which I'm all there for. But yeah, I just like I wanted to be amongst different cultures, and so yeah, growing up, I just wanted to get out there and understand more of the world around me, and that kind of shifted into being more interested into global affairs. Um, Very interested in wars that were happening. I grew up in the aftermath of 9/11, and so the wars going on over in the Middle East really shaped a lot of my keen interest in like global affairs. And so yeah, it just kind of went from there. And coming into uni, I knew that like I wanted to go into some sort of either humanitarian work or foreign policy or diplomacy of some sort. I just knew that that was the channel that I wanted to head down. So yeah, it's just been narrowing ever since.
So let's talk about that narrowing process. When you first start international studies, what sort of courses do you do at the beginning? And can you describe that process from where you begin to, as you've niched down?
A lot of people don't pick international studies. I'm actually one of the few students who just are doing a solo international studies degree. At the University of Wollongong, you have opportunities to do double degrees, as I'm sure you can do at a lot of other unis, or most unis, I would hope. But yeah, a lot of people pick international studies as an add-on to either like a Bachelor of Arts or laws or commerce, because it does seem like a pretty broad degree at first glance, and that it is. But for me, I came into it knowing that like this is what I want to do, and I actually did go to uni back because I'm a bit older. I came in as a mature age student. I started uni in 2017 and then dropped out because I was just going through a bad stage in life. But I'd started with a Bachelor of Arts with a Bachelor of International Studies, and I learned during that time that like I just want to do international studies. Like there is nothing in this other degree that I'm very interested in. So Bachelor of International Studies does come across as like a bit of like a, will that look okay on my on my wall sometime in the future? And I think a lot of people are a bit put off by the broadness of it, but it's actually a very, very good degree. I would recommend it to anyone, and like it is a great add-on to like a lot of other degrees. But we start off quite broad. We look in a lot of areas to do with like economics, history, politics. Like that, we cover a lot of bases, and then as we go through, we really have the opportunity to narrow it down. So there's a lot of everything's looked at through the lens of like on a global stage, and then we have opportunities to do electives, and then everyone in my university has to do a language minor, and so we have the opportunity to do. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that there is Mandarin, Japanese. I did Italian. There's also Spanish, which is quite popular, French, and there's probably others that I'm forgetting as well. Yeah, so we all have to do that compulsory language as well on top of everything. But it's been great for me because I've realized that I have a real keen interest in like history, and even in like the history subjects, everything ties back into like my international studies degree, like learning about the Cold War and even like everything that led up to World War One, and everything is through that lens of the shaping of the international system and where we are today. So it's a very good degree, and I would recommend it to anyone who's really interested in building a career, maybe in like foreign affairs or working with an NGO or
Just understanding the world. Let's face it.
yeah, like anything where you're looking at something beyond Australia's borders or on a transnational scale. It would be really, really helpful.
Would you be comfortable to talk about that process of dropping out of uni?
Yeah, now I'm happy to.
Tell me about it. What happened?
When I was in high school, I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety, basically meaning my anxiety wasn't attached to anything in particular. It just liked to pop up when it wanted to. And I had a real hard time managing that. So my anxiety wasn't attached to anything in particular. It just liked to turn up whenever it pleased, which was very tough for a teenager who was already having a hard time regulating their emotions. So going through school, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I think that's just my personality, wanting to do the best of the best. And when your body can't perform at the level that you want it to, it's very frustrating. And so I just pushed myself to my limits and basically hit a point of exhaustion. After my HSC, I didn't get a very good mark for my HSC, basically because of the anxiety. I had a panic attack during one of my exams, which was actually quite traumatic, that it took me a while to unpack. And I just didn't listen to my body. I just kept pushing myself. And I did get into University of Wollongong because they're very good about having as many local students on campus and really bringing them in, which I think is really cool, which I'm very grateful for the University of Wollongong for doing that, because it gives opportunities to a lot of regional students that wouldn't otherwise have opportunities to break through. So I did get through, but starting uni, I was just an anxious mess. I wasn't present. Like anyone who saw me at that time, I was just not there. And so I ended up dropping out. About, I think it was like 7 or 8 weeks into my first semester. Um, yeah, and then I took 4 years off. I traveled, I went overseas, and I came back and realized that I still wanted to do my degree, and I felt like I was ready to overcome that. And I came back way more solid, way more, I don't know, mature, knew what I wanted, and yeah, I was way more focused for it. So gap years are really good if you're not feeling up to go to uni. Listen to your body and take that time off because you'll come back better.
Do you remember what that moment was like when, or how you felt in that moment where you made that decision, where you're like, I'm out, I'm walking away from this? Can you tell me about that moment?
It was actually people around me who who said like you need to drop it, you need to drop out, like you need to step back from this. And I wasn't in the right headspace, so I wasn't being honest with myself. And so those people around me were the ones who had to really tell me. And when I took a moment of reflection, I looked at my life at the time. I wasn't getting out of bed. I wasn't even going to uni. I looked at my assignments and just went numb. I wasn't ingesting information. I wasn't enjoying myself, and I was going down a really deep spiral. And it just didn't feel like it would get any better if I stayed on that track. And so I knew that if I just took a step back, just even if I deferred for a semester, I'll be able to reassess then after. And then after I'd taken that step back, it was like a huge weight lifted off me. And then I had time to like heal and process and breathe, really, to give myself rest. And that's actually what I needed. I needed rest. I needed to take time and sleep in and get up and have a routine that didn't involve waking up at 4 a.m. because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do better and work really hard. And yeah, it was a really good time of like healing my body, and learning how to have balance in my life. So yeah, I gave myself that time. I said, if I defer for 6 months, I can ask myself like 6 months later if I want to pick uni back up and keep going. But like if I just give myself that 6 months off, then I can make that decision in like a stable frame of mind and where I'm being fair to myself. And I never went back. I realized that I actually needed that time off, and I needed to work. I needed to hang out with my friends, and I ended up having that opportunity to go overseas, and that was the best thing for me as well, because I really grew up a lot more and had those opportunities to break out of myself and realize that I could overcome things, and I wasn't always crippled by my anxiety. And there was life beyond that, that feeling that I had. And I began to have a world that didn't revolve around avoiding panic attacks and keeping myself numb and stable. I started to realize that there was waves, and there was stages when I would be sad, and there would be times where I would be really happy. And I started to see more of a regulation of my emotions, and that experiencing life really helped me realize that I was resilient and I was capable of growth and transformation. And I wouldn't have had that if I was at uni. I just would have been failing. And then constantly having that mindset reaffirmed, and that belief about myself being unintelligent and always anxious and having to have panic attacks to get through the day. And like all these things, all these beliefs that I'd had about myself were kind of squashed in just like the motions of everyday life and growing up. And then I was able to come back to uni knowing that like my anxiety doesn't define me. Like sometimes it turns up, sometimes it turns off, and I know that it's not going to stay, and I'll be able to get through this, and I am capable. I can grow. I love learning. Like I had to fall back in love with that process of learning again and being excited to, yeah, explore new things. I didn't have the capability to do that beforehand. I was just surviving. So it was a really important stage of life for me.
It sounds like you've learned to be gentle on yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Funny as but a lot of people actually never manage that, or it takes them a long time. So I mean, clearly, it's you've suffered for that through high school and this early phase of uni and what have you. But I sometimes wonder, listening to a story like that, if you haven't actually gained 10 years, extra years on your life, or 20 years on your life, that if you'd tried to push yourself beyond what your body was capable at that time, in fact, you would have cracked into such a crumbled heap that it would have literally
Yeah.
taken decades to emerge.
Yeah.
Um, and it actually seems like um, almost a blessing in disguise. I don't want to speak for you because obviously it's been extremely difficult, but
Mm.
yeah, in some ways, blessing in disguise to have saved decades that could have been otherwise lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. It's super personal. But I really think it's so important for young people to
Mm.
hear these stories of. I mean, you're a high
Yeah.
achiever. You might not say it about
Yeah.
yourself, but I'll certainly say it. You're a high achiever,
Mm.
and
Mm.
people sometimes look up to the high achievers and think that it's all just this awesome facade and nothing ever cracks underneath. But man, well, like we all crack underneath. That's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
And now you're kicking butt. So it's obviously
Yeah.
like
Just needed
coming.
to sleep.
Say again.
Mm. Just needed to sleep. I needed to rest. I needed to, yeah, get some balance.
There's so
Mm.
much to be said for that, though, right? Like our society pushes us
Yeah.
so hard, particularly in
Mm.
those later years of high school. It's marks, achieved, HSC. It's
Yeah.
all kind of building up to what seems like this critical point in life, and then you kind of
Mm.
go beyond that point and suddenly realize that it wasn't just an explosion waiting to happen or fireworks to happen. It's just like this dissipation. you know, you're kind of like, oh, actually, it wasn't such a big deal after all. But we
Yeah.
really like mark out that territory like it's the most important thing, and I think it's just
Oh,
too
we
much
do.
pressure on young people.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone always says, like, they say that your ATAR is not a big deal, but we're all thinking it. Like, we're all thinking that, like, this is what I need to get to where I want to go. And if I don't get it, then I am going to fall apart because, like, this is what I've been working 13 years of school and some
Mm,
people more to get. And so we do put that pressure on ourselves. And sometimes we have, like, parents or teachers putting that pressure way more on us than we are. And we feel that really strongly. And I think that you got to remember that we are all on our own trajectory. Like we're all moving at a different speed. And you got to listen to your body and listen to what you need because at the end of the day, you are only going to perform at your best when you are in tune with what your body needs. Like you can't ignore the fact that maybe you need to like go for a walk or get a full night's sleep, or maybe it's better for you to not, do that homework in the afternoon when you're exhausted. Rest, go for a walk, hang out with your friends, and then get up in the morning and do it. Like everyone's different. Yeah, so I think it's important that you kind of take a step back and really observe what your body is really needing and listen to that.
and picking up on something you said earlier, you described yourself as an introvert, which I
Yeah.
mean, I'm down the introverted end of the spectrum, so I
Mm.
get it. But a lot of people
Yeah.
might look and be like, Hannah seems so confident. Like, really? So tell me about that. And yeah, I mean, so I get it. But for those people who might just be like, huh? Explain that to me.
Yeah. It's so interesting. A lot of people think I am extroverted because I really do prioritize friendships. Like, I'm
Mhm.
always out with my friends and doing things. And if anyone sees me on campus, either I'm like in a really intense conversation with someone or really excited. I'm very expressive as well. But then there's other times people like wave to me and I just won't see them because I'm just so focused and in the zone. And I often am by myself on campus. Maybe that's the COVID effect. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm very content with my own company. And it's actually
Mm.
really difficult for me to break out of that. Um, like prioritizing friendships is actually one of the hardest things I've had to learn, especially when I am anxious. My first thing that I do is I just go and I just close off. And, I don't expect people to reach out and um, like pull me out of that. It's often up to me to reach out and be like, hi, I need help. Can we have coffee? Like, can we hang out? Like, can you sit with me? I have one friend who is actually the one who walked through a lot of my anxiety with me, like growing up. And a lot of our friendship is just doing things together and like going places. Um, and not doing anything in particular, which I just tag along sometimes when I'm anxious. I just sit there, and she's just doing her everyday life things, and I'll just tag along. Like, every friendship's a bit different, but I've had to learn how to prioritize people and give them a time in my life, because it has been the most enriching thing, those friendships. I've learned so much about others, and I've been like, the joy of just like doing life with people is the best. And I would, anyone who feels like they can't break through, like, that was actually me. I always struggled, and I'm like, by default, quite awkward. And so I had to learn how to kind of embrace that awkwardness and just like not take myself too seriously, and learn how to joke about myself, be sometimes a bit self-deprecative, but not too much, like those people who are
Yeah.
like a bit too self-deprecative. I'm like, do you want to talk about it? Do you need help? Just not being one of those people. But yeah, just being able to be content with like the way you are. Like, I've had to learn to just really love, like, this is how I am. I'm a bit highly strung sometimes when I'm stressed, but I know that I value these people in my life, and I want them to feel appreciated and loved. And so that's been a huge thing of mine, just making sure that I'm constantly getting coffee with friends, or especially when I'm not feeling like it, to really make time. Like, whether it's like going for a walk in the morning, like tomorrow morning, I don't have time tomorrow because I'm working on an assignment, but I've organised with her to go for a morning walk to watch the sunrise, and we'll get a coffee, and then we'll both go get on with our days. So just doing things like that, and I always feel better for it, even though I don't want to do it a lot of the time. I would much rather just get on with it, be efficient, fill
That's
in
right.
as much of my days as possible. But it's actually like the one thing that we often really need the most, and why a lot of people struggle with loneliness is because they've just learnt to shut people out so much, or do things on their own, that they just have lost that,
Cut themselves off. Yeah.
yeah, art of connection. Yeah. So
So true, isn't it? I mean,
mm,
introverts get their energy from time alone, whereas extroverts get
yeah,
their energy from being around other people. So just because you get your energy by, I mean, I'm definitely that case, right? Like, I get my energy back when I go for a run in the bush.
yeah,
Um, that to me is where my energy comes from. Um, and just like accepting that you're not broken because you don't
yeah,
suddenly
yeah,
feel magnificent because you're in a room full of people. I feel great in a room full of people that I know well, or that I know, or when people
yes,
know me. But send me into a room full of people I don't know. I'm like, oh my god, here we go. And then the other thing around introversion that I find is fascinating, and for somebody sort of watching or listening to this, you know, introverts tend to think before they speak, whereas extroverts will think and speak at the same time. And so extroverts will sometimes find that introverts are quiet, or, and this is where this kind of what's the right word, like mistake about introverts being shy comes about. It's because introverts might be slower to speak because they're thinking of what to say, whereas extroverts are much more comfortable just talking and thinking at the same time. So it's kind of like on both sides of the equation. Like the extroverts need to just slow down, allow people to think, and not just make a judgment. And the introverts also need to, let the extra, or understand that the extroverts, that's the way they're processing, that they're just
yeah,
processing these two things at the same
yes,
time. And in both
yes,
cases, none of us are broken. We're just
yeah,
wired differently. So
yeah.
pausing and understanding that is valuable for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in COVID, when we had classes like on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and everything, one of the things I found so difficult was being asked a question and then expected to respond straight away. Like, I needed time to process that question and really think about it, and then come back maybe like 5, 10 minutes later with my thought out process. And I think that I do much better in written assignments for that reason, rather than
Mm,
tests. And that's why, where the HSC really failed me, was it was all tests. It was all under pressure, and I couldn't process it. I couldn't really think about it because I'm a very deep thinker. And a lot of people think they're really dumb, but they're probably just really deep thinkers, and they need time to be able to process things. So I would say, if that's you, like, give yourself time to process something rather than coming to quick judgments about yourself, because that was me. all these like processes in school made me think that I was actually not very smart because I was under the pump, expected to churn out responses. But when I came into uni, and I had those opportunities to do those written assignments, because I'm in the humanities, so it is all, for the most part, written assignments rather than tests and memory-based things. I realized that like actually like I'm really good at processing these thoughts. Like I just needed to give myself an afternoon to really like deeply think about it. And when I was able to bring that back to the table, it was like something that edified that discussion, and others who were similar were able to do the same, and the extroverts were able to bounce off all these things and add these really really amazing points to discussion that really like gave it so much more, I don't know if flavor is the right word, but it was very, yeah, really really enriched discussion. So everyone's got a different way of processing, and all of it is very very helpful to how others process. So yeah, back to that connection point, like it's really good to be able to connect with people who are of different thought processes, because it really helps the way we, yeah, think.
Do you think so? Jumping into something that you've achieved just recently, I mean, you've just been awarded a New Colombo Plan scholarship. Congratulations. Very big deal.
Thank
Top,
you.
top, top scholarship for Australian students in the country, in my view, bar none. How do you find that process of being A, mature age student, and B, having spent that time to think deeply about who you are, the things that interest you, to get reoriented back into uni. To what extent do you think those things were an advantage for you going into that process?
I think learning about myself and the way that my brain works, and actually the things that are advantages rather than being constantly bombarded with all the things that I'm not good at, which was no one's fault. It was just the circumstance and the stage of life I was in. I was just, all the things that triggered me were the things that I was doing every day. And I couldn't get out of it because it was school. It was, yeah, it was just life for me then. So being able to step away from that and to work, that really helped my social skills. I was like, being anxious teenager, you are in your head. Like all my childhood was just being in my head and like overthinking everything. And when you have people like demanding things of you like all the time, in a working environment, you kind of got to rise above that kind of in your head thing, and you learn how to be able to not suppress, but like push aside that and not be ruled by those thoughts all the time. You kind of have to be present, and not that I was great at it at the time. Like I worked in a cafe, but I was empowered because I learned that I could be more and I could work towards something more. So that's, I think, what started it for me, was to put myself in situations where I had to grow. And sometimes you sink. Like I've had so many moments, even recently, as I was undergoing the application process for this scholarship. I had a really hard year where I had a lot of things that I thought would work out that I failed at, and I really questioned myself and my abilities. So there's always going to be things that you realize you're not good at, but that's actually something that, again, really gives you, really empowers you to go forward, because you realize that's not for me. I can do this. This is what I can do, and I can work towards that. And so it really simplifies or zeroes in, gives you a focus to work towards. And I think, especially for me, when I was in school, I really needed to go from all these big emotions down to work on one little thing, work towards going one step, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. Like just, I had to go from that to, actually I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And I ended up being able to go overseas. And when I was overseas, that was a whole new set of challenges. And then I learned again that like, actually I'm way more capable than I thought I was. Like going from like a teenager that like had to think about her every breath without panicking, to being able to catch a plane by herself, like that's a massive, massive thing. And so I grew so much. And I think even reflecting back on it now, I didn't realize in those moments how much I'd grown and transformed. So all of that, when coming up to this scholarship and applying for it, I had that in my back pocket, knowing that like I'm capable. Like even if I don't get this, I can try, because even if I don't get it, it's going to be a addition to me anyway. I'm learning so much, and I'm reflecting. I'm getting this opportunity to reflect on how far I've come as well, which is a lot of the scholarship. You're having to really reflect on your own story and how what you've been through could benefit others. So yeah, even if I didn't get it, it was so good to reflect on those past experiences as well. So I don't even know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. I mean, it strikes me you're really good at contextualizing, and this sounds like a learned skill from what you've said, but contextualizing your failures and contextualizing your discomfort, and saying, okay, yeah, this sucks. I botched this. I have this horrible feeling today, but here's the context. You know, this will make me stronger. This will improve me in the long run. If I fail at this thing that's coming up, so be it. This is just a learning experience for the future. Where did that come from? Do you remember a moment where that happened for the first time and you were just like, fuck it, like, this is
Yeah.
how I'm going to do it from now on? Was there a moment?
Honestly, the first thing that came to mind was psychology.
Hmm.
Going to the psychologist when I was younger.
Yeah, good.
Um, that was something I learned um, was to separate myself from what I was going through and look at it, and yeah,
What did they tell you? Was there a technique? Super curious.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I still use this to this day, and it's quite funny. But I think that's why I've remembered it, because it was so strange. But she talked about picturing those anxious emotions as like a germ, and it was infecting you, and it was messing you up, and you had to look at the germ and see it for what it was and acknowledge it for what it was, that it was like this germ and it was impacting you. And then to see yourself as separate was like the major takeaway that I had from that. To not, when you're feeling anxious, you think it's all of you, like it's all encompassing, it's taking over, it's everything. You feel the symptoms of anxiety physically in your body too, so it's like your brain is like connected with your body, and it's like making you think that it's everything. And so for me, in those moments, to be like, you are this germ who's affecting me right now, and I'm going to separate, give myself some distance from that. It gave me something to be able to use skills and strategies to to bring myself back to like a state of rationality. Sometimes for some people, like you can't get yourself to that state of rationality, and there's like separate things that like in therapy that you can do to help yourself with that. But for me, and what I was going through, that separation from it and being able to connect yourself in with the world around you. So like I did it through the five senses, which is another skill that they teach you, to like think about five things of the five senses, and while you're focusing on all those things that isn't your anxiety, you're
Mm.
grounding yourself and you're bringing yourself back to like a state of reality. And sometimes it takes a really long time to get to that state, and sometimes it doesn't shift, but for the most part, for me, even just that first step of separation does a lot. So, and that's where that contextualizing comes in
So
for
important, isn't it?
me.
That's incredible. I mean, we're not our feelings. Our feelings happen to us. They don't happen for us. And so when
Yeah,
we detach those, when we can manage to detach them, it's very powerful. But it's hard to do. So definitely a learned technique. And the more you do it, the more you become gentle with yourself, and the more when you feel those shit feelings, you can learn to step back and observe them, and not try and push them away. As they say, what we resist persists. So
it's
the
true.
more that you hold on to them and you observe them, then suddenly you realize. I love the analogy of the germ. It's there, right? And it's infecting you, and it's washing over you. But eventually your immune system will kick in and push it out if we
Mm.
just stay with it and observe it, and let ourselves do the work. What was that moment like when you got the email that said, "Hannah, congratulations, you've
Mm.
been nominated as a scholar"? Tell me about that moment.
It was actually strange because I was, it wasn't the emotional reaction that I thought I would have. I think I had this feeling of like quiet satisfaction of like, oh, I did it. Like I knew you could do it,
Nice.
Hannah. It was just like, yeah, it's like, okay, onwards and upwards from here. Like, I'd never been in a situation where I've worked so hard for something and actually got it. I've only ever experienced like working really hard and then failing, working really hard, then failing, or giving everything to something and just not being that quite good enough. And so I'd built this resilience, obviously, through those past experiences.
Oh yeah.
And to have that email come through and realize that, like, oh, I actually, they saw I had something to offer. Like, it was just like this quiet satisfaction in my heart that I'd worked so hard to foster this headspace of capability and being able to do something with my life and not always be hindered by all these like thoughts and emotions and anxieties and fluctuations of my mental health. To being able to overcome that and come to this point, I think was something that was really deeply satisfying more than anything. So yeah, I think everyone else around me, like my family and my friends, were way more excited about it than I was. I was just thinking about like, oh, I've got so much to do now and so much
Yeah,
planning. Yeah. And
I
like, I
love it.
don't even know what to do. Yeah. So I was thinking more about like, oh,
It's like the introvert satisfaction, right? Just kind of like,
yeah,
yep, I did it.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny
I
because
did.
right now, business wise, I run a couple of different projects and business initiatives and
Mm.
things, and you're like, I just need a win right now. It's been 6 months I've
Yeah.
been working on this one thing, and man,
Mm.
like I've thrown so many irons in the fire. I've worked my butt off. I feel like
Mm.
I've tried innovative things, and just nothing has stuck. And there are
Yeah.
days where I'm just like, fuck it, I just need a win.
Yeah.
And I know one's going to come. Like it's like this in life. It's you go through periods where things are dry for a while, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you get a win. And I know when it comes, I'm going to feel just like you described. I love the description. Like I know I'm just going to lean back in my chair with that email or having taken that phone call and just be like, yes, you made it.
Yeah.
Like you were
Yeah.
patient. You were gentle on yourself. You made it. Good on you. Like now let's enjoy this for 2 minutes and let's get on with the work.
Yeah, I've got a plan. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and what's your plan? So what's your plan for the program?
Yeah. I'm headed off to Malaysia for my NCP
Cool.
project. I don't know whether I'm going in July or October this year, but it's coming up very soon. So I'm at the moment working through internships, trying to find internships, which I know I'm a bit behind on, but I've been procrastinating. So I'm really going to knuckle down on that. But yeah, I'll be able to attend university over there. So I'll be going to the University of Malaya, which
Nice.
I'm very excited for. And I'll be studying Southeast Asian foreign policy. So I'll be able to have a real insight into how Southeast Asian nations go about their diplomacy. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really awesome experience to get that perspective and be able to bring that back to Australia and even just for my own like career future ahead. Like it's going to be really amazing to have that perspective. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity and be able to step into nations around me and have insight into how they do their foreign policy too. So that would be cool, really cool.
At the end of your degree, if sort of thinking forward from where you are now, if you were to be standing at the end of your degree today and looking back and saying, you know what, man, that was a success. Like I made it. What would you have achieved? I suppose. What are the things you would have done at that point to have that feeling? Is my question logical?
Mm. Yeah, no, it is. It is cool.
It's like
Mm.
retrospective forward thinking, if that makes sense.
Mhm. So like you mean like what would I have done? Wait, so what I've done
Yeah, like
to
if you
make
project yourself into the future and you're standing at your graduation day and you're just like,
yeah,
fucking nailed it. Like
yeah.
I kicked that thing. What else? What would it look like for you? Like what in your whole experience through uni would you have done to be standing on that
Mhm.
dais, holding your diploma, feeling like that?
Yeah, I think one thing even I went into this whole degree experience with was just like a real fierce focusedness. Like I told myself from the beginning that I'm paying for this, so I'm going to give it everything. Um, and so I treated everything I did like I was putting my money on it. which I am, and most students in Australia are. Um, so yeah, I just did it like with that in mind. So I think that for me is something that I'm even now looking back on, and I'm really proud of myself for giving every subject I did my everything, even the ones I didn't like. I went in with a mindset that I can learn something from this. And even if there was lecturers I struggled with or their way of teaching that didn't meet my way of learning, I I pushed myself, and I was positive with myself to be open to learning something and not shut down because it didn't work for me. And some subjects I realized I didn't do very well in, and I wasn't really good at it. But that's okay because, like, again, like I said before, I learned something from it. So I guess that mindset of like there is something to learn from everything, and to be that I was excited about learning and excited to grow my understanding of the world around me. Um, yeah, I think to achieve would to come out the other end more excited about going forward rather than feeling burnt out like I did at the end of high school would be a real achievement for me. Um, and to guard my self care as well. Self care is such a buzzword right now, but
Mm.
yeah, to really guard what I need, and to put myself first. And sometimes to put myself first is to sit down and do my readings, by the way. So I don't mean like lighting a candle, having a bubble bath, and like forgetting
Yeah, yeah.
that I have all these things to do. But like sometimes, like for me, self care has been like taking myself to the library and buying myself a hot drink and working on an assignment, and I walk away feeling so edified and so excited about what I'm learning because I'm giving myself that time to do that and not, yeah. So I think that's my main things to come out like feeling ready to like go forward rather than feeling exhausted and burnt out. I'm just thinking to myself like, oh, that was such a waste of time because I know a lot of people who have gone through their degrees like coming out the other end and be like, I don't know what I'm going to use that for. Like, I don't know why I did that. And I don't want to ever be like that. I don't want to walk out of my degree feeling like it was a waste of time. So yeah, I've just the whole time been treating it as something that I can learn something from, even the things that I didn't want to do.
That's awesome. My guest today has been Hannah Lawrence from the University of Wollongong. She's studying a Bachelor of International Studies, also a recipient of the Australian Government's New Colombo Plan Scholarship. Hannah, amazing chatting with you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you for giving me a space to share my story and my experiences. It's been really lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, look, I'm really grateful. You know, I really appreciate the authenticity and the openness. We need a lot of conversations like this. Quite sincerely, I think this has been one of the most important conversations that I've had as doing some of these recordings. Because it's hard out there. It's hard for everybody. You know,
Yes.
some people
Yeah.
deal with that more or less well. You know,
Yeah.
or have bigger or smaller challenges. But the idea that anyone just sails through and
Oh,
doesn't suffer in some way is bullshit.
yeah. Yeah. It's a lie.
Yeah,
They're lying.
yeah. It's funny because like talking
Or
to
not trying.
talking talking to like NCP recipients, um, who high achieving, have won this huge scholarship. The amount of like imposter syndrome and people
Oh, yeah.
every day people are just like, oh my god, but look at that person over there who's done so much. Well, I can tell you, person over here who's doing all this thing, and they have the same fucking feelings as the rest of us. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, super valuable conversation. That's been a privilege for me. I really appreciate your openness.
Well, thanks, Rob.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Thanks
it's
for listening.
I
Mm.
love this kind of thing, guy, because I didn't know what to expect. It's always nice just to walk in and not know what to
Yeah.
expect and to have a
Well, I
lovely
wasn't
conversation.
expecting to dump all my history on you, but um, I don't know. I didn't even realize until having this conversation how it's shaped my life up until this point to such an extent. Like, I've never really properly reflected on it like this before. So, yeah, it's been enriching for me too to just remember like what actually has gone into where I
Where you
am. And
are,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll probably be able to listen back and be like, okay, I can never forget that. Like, that's what I had to go through. And the reason I am the way I am is because I went through all those
Yeah,
things and I had to figure out a way to come out the other end. And I did somehow.
it's
Mm.
interesting. I think our stories are important. They don't define the future. All they do define is the past. The expression I love most right now is that the path is behind us, and everything from forward, we don't know what's going to happen. But all of that stuff is really interesting to reflect on. To just be like, yeah, okay, I understand myself a little bit better. and whatever choices I make going forward, who knows where they lead me. But not just trying to push part of our story aside that suddenly are inconvenient or what have you. So yeah, good convo. I've really enjoyed that. Any last thoughts? What have you got on for this afternoon?
I'm off to work after this.
Nice.
I do support work, so I'm going to look after one of my clients, which is always fun. It's just hanging out with friends. It's great. So it's one of the easier jobs I have. So yeah, that's where I'm going. I'll probably go and get my nails done after that.
Good.
Because I got paid, so I'm just going to treat myself. Yeah, do some shopping. I don't know. We'll see.
What I love, I really love that you've learned to be gentle with yourself, and maybe sometimes you're still not gentle enough. You could be more gentle,
Oh,
but of course, but at least it's great to see, that like you've clearly suffered a lot, like you've had a lot of hard times, and you're on this journey where you're being kinder to yourself and being more aware and everything. That's really super cool to see. So
yeah.
I can't wait to see. We should talk again after your NCP.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, see if I'm more gentle, maybe more hard on myself. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I didn't realize that was something that I'd been working on until you voiced it. Like, because I'm naturally extremely hard on myself, hence the anxiety.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
and so for you to even say that, to recognize that I've been working on that, it's actually made me really realize that, like, wow, I'm doing okay, because that's the thing that I struggle with the most out of everything, is just having extremely high expectations for myself
hmm
and obviously not being able to meet them most of the time. Mm,
But this happens to
mm,
so many of us, right? Like I think
yeah,
I see one of my daughters has extremely high. She's a perfectionist. So
yeah,
having those conversations, like it's nobody's perfect. It's completely
yeah,
okay to fail. In fact, it's good when
yeah,
and that's some of your language was like that. Like failure's been important, and
oh yeah,
I recognize how valuable it is, and even in the moment when it's still stinging and hurting, that's a very high level of maturity that you have that will stand you in good shape. Some people never in their lives get to that point. So fuck, if you're already there, congratulations, because you got another 70 good years in front of you
well,
to,
thank you for saying that. That's really encouraging.
to make the most of it.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So good on you.